Hey, good morning, everybody, to our first round 7 informational session for the Ohio Federal Research Network. What we're going to do today is provide you all an opportunity to be able to ask some questions about specific areas of interest that are part of this solicitation. But I'll go over very briefly here initially, just as a reminder, some of the details that are important when it comes to your consideration for putting together a proposal. So next slide, Becky. As I mentioned, here's the agenda. The Q&A session itself, please put your questions in the Q&A as part of the Zoom webinar. So on the bottom of your Zoom screen, there should be a Q&A button down there, a little square with a question mark in it. You can click that and open it, and that will allow you to type in questions. If for some reason you have an older version of Zoom or that's not working for you, feel free, of course, to use the chat function. And you are also will be provided the opportunity to, if you'd like to, come off of mute and ask a question verbally. That's fine as well. Probably the easiest way to do that, so that we know that you want to do that, is to just raise your hand. And that, again, at the bottom of your screen, there should be a little hand down there that you can click, which will allow you to raise your hand to ask a question and come off of mute. Next slide, please. So again, these are the goals for the Ohio Federal Research Network. I'm sure many of you have probably seen these before. It's all based off of the triple helix model of innovation, where we bring academia, industry, and government together to provide solutions specifically to our 4 federal partners that we have for Ohio Federal Research Network. Next slide. And those federal partners: NASA Glenn Research, Air Force Research Lab, the National Air and Space Intelligence Center, and the Navy Medical Research Unit in Dayton. The Ohio National Guard is also one of our partners that provides input and key guidance to us for this particular program. Next slide. Just a quick roll up on where we're at through December the 11th of last year. Anyways, you can see through the first 6 rounds, which Ohio OFRN started in around 2015, the state has put in around $62 million of investment into this program. We have been able to see a follow-on funding award level of almost $400 million. And most importantly is that those small businesses and academic partners that have engaged in the Ohio Federal Research Network have also been able, or have been willing, to put in a little over $40 million of cost share into this particular program. Next slide. So some big foot stompers here. So the project teams that get put together to be able to provide a solicitation to this program, proposal, excuse me, to this solicitation, must include 1 industry member, and that industry must have a physical presence here in the state of Ohio, at least 2 college or university partners, and the Air Force Institute of Technology does qualify as a partner. And then 1 federal sponsor. And again, we can help with any of these. So on the bottom of the web page, where the round 7 solicitation and information is listed on our website, there is a teaming link down there, and you can select that teaming link if you need help when it comes to selecting an industry partner, if you're an academic PI, or if you're an industry partner and you maybe don't know what colleges or universities might be working on similar technology that you're working on, to be able to put together a proposal for one of our areas of interest. We can help with that as well. And then we can also help when it comes to finding a federal partner or sponsor for you to be able to partner with. Next slide. So the key here for this particular program is that it's really based off of applied research. We understand that many of our universities and colleges here in the state of Ohio already do basic or foundational research. What we're looking for is something that is just a little bit higher on the TRL or the technology readiness level scale. So 3 or higher would be what we're trying to find. Because that will, over the period of performance for this particular solicitation, which is 18 months, that will allow the team to be able to get that TRL up to the 5 to 6 range. And then, of course, we can work on getting commercialization at the end of that as well, and move it on out to be able to do great things. Next slide, please. The proposal that you're going to put together is going to consist of these things. And again, this is all on the website as well. And this briefing, by the way, will also be available once we get done today. Usually takes a day or two to get the briefing up on our website. But your main technical proposal, which is 8 pages, the prepared statement of work, which has no page limit, the student experiential engagement, which I'm not going to talk specifically about today, but information is on our website, is limited to 2 pages. The technical proposal supplement is also limited to 2 pages. A quad chart, and that is outlined as well on our web page, is 1 page, and then of course the TRL analysis is also 1 page, and there's a link that will take you to a website that can do that for you. And then of course your business and cost proposal, which is very important. Next slide, please. I mentioned the student experiential engagement, and there are a couple different ways that you can do that. In fact, one of the partners that we have on today will give some ideas on how they might be able to help you if you need help putting together a student experiential engagement. There is some additional training that's going to be coming in March, on March the 6th. Which is mandatory training for at least 1 member of the proposal team. Now, we do understand everybody's busy. There's lots of other things going on today in the world. So if for some reason a member of your team that you have are in the process of putting together cannot attend that webinar, you can work with Becky to be able to be given access to a recording of the webinar. And then let her know once you've watched it, and be able to ensure that you get all the necessary training that you need for this proposal. Next slide, please. So I'll let you look at here at the key dates that we have coming up. Today's February the 10th, so it's the first informational session. There will be 2 more, February the 25th and March the 20th. So if you can't stay for the whole session today, that's okay. You'll have at least 2 more opportunities to be able to ask questions to our federal subject matter experts on the areas of interest that are part of this solicitation. I just mentioned the proposal training or offers conference that's on March the 6th. That at least 1 member of your team needs to attend, or we can coordinate you to be able to watch the recording for that. We will accept questions through April the 18th. The due date for the proposal is April the 28th. And the reason there's a little bit of difference there between the questions accepted and the due date is so that we can make sure that we get answers back to everybody on those questions before the actual due date for the proposal. And then you can see the rest of the timeline here for that. Because this is funded through the state of Ohio and the Ohio Department of Higher Education, we will not know exactly how much money we were going to get until the governor signs the budget, which usually doesn't happen until the end of June. So although we may know where all of the proposals rank, excuse me, boy, I can't speak this morning. We will not know how many proposals are going to get funded until the governor signs the budget. So just as a foot stomp there is that I know everybody is anxious, after they submit a proposal to know whether or not they're going to be funded. Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to tell you that until probably sometime around the first week of July this year. Next slide, please. So here's the areas of interest. I'll leave that there just for a second. I see there's I got a note here in the chat from Lauren that says, would there be any capability briefing network meeting to foster collaboration? Not exactly sure what that's asking. Lauren, do you any idea?
So this question was asked by Santanu. I can bring him off mic, or if he'd like to clarify in chat, feel free to type in chat for any clarification.
Sure. I think he has his hand up, so if you want to go ahead and Becky or Lauren, can you go ahead and have him go ahead and ask his question? Have him come off mute and ask his question.
Yep, he should be able to unmute.
Hey, this is Sean. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yeah, the questions for me is like sometimes lots of other platforms they do for matchmaking activities, like organizations present some ideas and see what's their mutual interest so that we can get more collaborations across different organizations. So my question was whether you are going to host any kind of that capabilities briefing meeting so that we can present what our ideas are and others can present, and that's why we can have a more collaborative proposal.
That's a great question and an interesting point. Although we, as part of this program, don't facilitate that, but that could be something potentially to look at further down the line.
And I have other questions down the line. I mean, so once I get a chance, I have 5-6 other questions.
Okay. Alrighty. Well, hopefully we'll be able to get to those. So I want to make sure let's see, I have one other question here that looks like it might be sort of general in nature. Many of the federal agencies have locations both within and outside of Ohio. Is it correct that we should aim to work with federal researchers physically based in Ohio, or is working with researchers affiliated with these federal agencies but located outside of Ohio also fine? So as long as you're working with one of those four federal agencies, which I fully understand, AFRL, of course, has folks in Rome, New York, as well as New Mexico and other places around the country. So based on the subtopic technology on the area of interest here, if it's such that, there's an AFR researcher that is located someplace else outside the state of Ohio, as long as they are affiliated with AFRL, then that's fine. That meets the requirement. Alrighty. So what we're going to do is we're going to go through each of the AOIs in order. We'll take 10 minutes for Q&A for each AOI just to make sure that we get through all of the AOIs. If it's less than 10 minutes, that's great. Then maybe they'll give us extra time at the end to go back if we need to. And we'll do the best to try to answer as many questions as we can during that 10-minute time period. Remember, there are 2 more opportunities, and we are keeping track of all of the Q&A. We will go back to our subject matter experts with questions that don't get answered live to be able to get answers, and then all of the answers will be posted eventually on the website for each of these different webinars that we're hosting. So if we can go to next slide, please, which I believe is hypersonics, AOI, and the 2 subtopics, which are materials and technology to enable variable geometry of aerodynamic surfaces and high-speed aircraft thermal management and heat rejection technology. And I believe we have 2 individuals, or 3 potentially, from NASA and AFRL that are with us today that can hopefully answer any questions that you have on these particular topics. So we'll start the 10-minute timer now. And as I mentioned, please limit your questions right now to hypersonics. So if you have a hypersonics question on AOI, again, I see we have at least one hand raised. You can come off mute and ask your question. And
Hi, my name is Shantanu Bag from Astratech LLC in Dayton, Ohio. So my questions are like, we are developing a new coating technologies which could be used for additive manufacturing. I'm curious to know whether that's interesting to any of the NASA or AFRL labs, and if yes, how can we get connected to either of NASA or both AFRL and NASA labs, so that we want to see whether our ideas are good and is there any mutual interest with AFRL or NASA.
so is that your additive manufacturing, is that specifically in the hypersonics area, or is it in some other tech? Because if it's in some other tech,
Yeah, it's the hypersonics materials development and using those materials for hypersonics applications using additive manufacturing.
okay. If we can have maybe one of our subject matter experts help me out here with answering the question for that, as far as whether or not it relates to either the subtopics.
I'll go. Hi, this is Calvin Mickler from Air Force Research Laboratory, also in Dayton. Good to meet you. I mean, in general, we are interested in additive manufacturing of kind of hypersonic materials, so I'd be happy to have a separate sidebar discussion with you to see what your ideas are. It's hard to say just from what you told us whether or not it fits in subtopic 1 or 2. I think the focus for these subtopics is really looking at more the functional side of the materials rather than just additive manufacturing of high temperature materials in general. So how can we actually develop new materials and technologies to, for in-flight maneuverability, for example, or for subtopic number 2, how do we, do better thermal management with, better heat exchanger materials, higher delta enthalpies, hopefully that answers something, but I'd be happy to have a separate discussion with you offline.
Can I get your email to connect separately?
Yes. Is there a, hold on, I can chat separately with you, I think.
Yeah, you should be able to, I think, yeah.
Perfect. Yep, I will send you my email.
Thank you. I'll be in contact with you.
Right, thank you. It looks like I'm trying to keep track of the Q&A here as well. So Becky and Lauren, if you can help me with that. But we might have a typo on number 2 there, Becky. I think it is high speed as opposed to high seed.
Sorry about that.
Unless you know something I don't. So
No, it's high speed. Sorry.
okay. Let's see. One of the other questions, do the proposals need to be strictly within those topics / subtopics? The answer is yes. Is that your proposal needs to address one of these subtopics, which is kind of why we're doing these Q&A sessions, so that if you have specific questions about or would like some additional definition as to what the subtopic is addressing, then feel free to ask your question based off of that. Let's see if I missed any other ones here on AOI 1. Don't see any hands raised. Um, I'm just trying to look in the Q&A here too. We have an individual potentially looking for teaming opportunities, which the answer is yes. If on the bottom of the web page, that the link that takes you to OFRN Round 7, there is a teaming link there, and we can help you with connecting to other individuals that have a similar interest to what you're doing. Sorry.
Keith Bowman has a question, when you're ready, Mark.
Yep, you can go ahead and come off of mute.
Can you hear me?
Yep, I can hear you now.
Yeah, I'm Keith Bowman from Parallax. I can't really support, OFRN in a sense. We can't bid on anything, but as a hypersonics guy from AFRL, I got a question that might clarify some things here. So when we talk variable geometry of aerodynamic surfaces, we're talking control surfaces to avoid gaps and seals, or are we talking morphing structures, or maybe even morphing inlets, I guess, to basically allow a greater range of operability of that propulsion system?
So for any of our subject matter experts, if you could please come off of mute and answer Keith's question.
I'm going to lean on NASA for this one. My understanding was kind of all of the above. So think seals, morphing structures potentially, but I think colleagues from NASA are better suited to answer this question.
Yeah, this is Pat Dunlap from NASA. Can you guys hear me?
Yep, we got you now.
Okay. So yeah, I know it's not shown on the screen, but at least in a version of the call that I had seen previously, there definitely is an interest in high temperature seals. That's kind of my area of expertise. So to answer Keith's question, yeah, so anywhere that there would be control surfaces, seals around the perimeter of those, shaft seals, things like that. And then also morphing structures, that's been a topic of interest too. So yeah, yes, basically all the above.
Cool, thanks.
Right. Any other questions on these topics or this topic? It was a good question, actually, that isn't specific here, but it probably does address some questions, which is, should we choose only one subtopic, or can we mention multiple subtopics in the proposal in case the proposed research is related to multiple subtopics? And he provides a couple of examples there on AOI 1 and AOI 7 for that. So because of the way the analysis is done, where we have a team on our technical review committee that reviews each of the proposals for that, is that you need to address one of the subtopics per proposal. So you can submit more than one proposals, but each proposal must address one of the subtopics for that, so that we can divide it up when we go through the analysis portion of the for our technical review council. You can tell me, Becky, if there's something different about that, but that's kind of the way that I would take that.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, we're approaching the 10-minute point. So for AOI 1, so thank you so much for those questions. Let's go to AOI 2 with his health and humans performance. In the subtopics, predictive AI to support medical triage, life-saving interventions, and medical logistics utilization across the continuum of en route care, and AI-supported logistics planning for operational commanders. So any questions for AOI 2? I see there's one in the chat. Or Mike, you could come off of mute if you'd like to answer it real time. Ask it real time. I'm not hearing anything, so I don't know if you're still muted or not.
There we go. I just got off mute, unmuted.
Okay. Yep, go ahead.
Yeah, so the original question was if there has been, especially for subtopic 1, if there is a transition partner that's already been either soft or hard identified. But the broader question is really about, my name is Mike Rail, I'm at Ohio State, and we have developed a pretty robust platform which has technologies, but also has clinical resources that can help us use that. So we really have a way to test these new technologies, not just from a bench perspective, but actually human in the loop stuff as well. And but it's probably not exactly the use case that has been thought of for this. Certainly, it's not military. It's layperson healthcare. So I was just wondering how, is that big platform that, is that going to be seen as a strength or a weakness in this? And is there a transition partner also that would be able to provide clinical resources to help with the evaluations? Over.
So let's see, we have Kevin Schmidt or Dan Zelnick or Jerry Myers that can answer that.
Yeah, I'm happy to jump in first, but also defer to Kevin. So as I understand the first part of the question, is there a specific transition partner identified? I don't know. There's not a single specific partner. Certainly, if you had partners in mind, that could be part of the discussion. There are certainly partners that operate in the medical triage space for the DoD, in addition to AFRL, that could be strong candidates for building out those partnerships. But kind of answering this, what I think is what I heard the second part of your question was, what's the focus, or would a infrastructure be seen as a positive or negative? I'm not sure it's clear it would be one way or the other. Ultimately, if I distill down the opportunities and the subtopics from the 7-11th perspective, we're looking for solutions that ensure we can do, speedy deployment clearance of casualties from the battlefield, intelligent triage and prioritization, and efficient resupply. So any activities that are in support of those higher level goals, I believe, would be supportive of the projects that would fall underneath either of the subtopics. Over. And then Kevin or Jerry, if you had anything, feel free to jump in.
Hey, this is Kevin Schmidt. I concur. I have nothing to add right now.
Yeah, this is Jerry from NASA. Our use case is a little different than the AFRL case, because we're in more STOR environment. We're talking about limited. There's literally no resupply. There's no. We take what we can with us, and that's all we have with us. So, in that sense, we're looking at evaluating how something like this would buy down our overall risk and how we would evaluate that. And if I heard what you said correctly, Mike, I would think that a tool like or a facility like you're talking about would be able to quantify that kind of risk buy down for the other predictive tools that you're developing. So I would see it, from my point of view, I would see it as a positive from our point.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
Have a question in the Q&A. Says that University of Cincinnati Medical Center, they have patients with severe TBI who require monitoring via invasive. I'm not sure if that's was a typo, and surface EEGs, or maybe I'm just not reading the word correctly. We propose to use machine learning to predict recovery in terms of Glasgow outcome scale by using a combination of EEG and other physiological measures. Would this fall under the first subcategory? This will potentially help clinical decision making as well as for the family.
I'll jump in there just on a nitty gritty technical level, and talking with some of the operator interests in the tools developed from this. EEG isn't used like deep in the field all that much. Certainly at the more well-equipped hospitals, they use EEG. So I guess, on a technical perspective is those things are of interest, but it's kind of limited. We don't have EEGs out in the field, I don't think, or on the back of the C-17s. It's more limited use cases, but if you can put together a good proposal, that is definitely something of interest at some level. I just think limited applicability for the Air Force right now. I don't know, Dan, does that track your thinking?
Yeah, I don't want to over parse it, but as I'm reading what you put forward, my first, initial concern would be if it's narrowly focused on monitoring for, already diagnosed TBI. There's an element of narrowness to that that I think that the solutions we're talking and the concepts we're proposing a little bit more general triage and diagnosis support. And then just sort of as a subcategory, while, TBI is certainly DoD relevant, as I'm envisioning some of the motivating factors from the AFRL side for this, as we're looking toward, a pressing need for optimized medical care and triage in future command and control environments. My concern would be that may not be representative of the most urgent types of care we'd be talking about providing in those environments. So I wouldn't exclude it. But again, a lot of what's driving the DoD and the Air Force now is looking toward, future potential conflicts, and how the nature of that may differ from, recent or current conflicts might be a factor you want to consider as you're formulating your proposals. Again, from the airfield perspective, certainly over to NASA for maybe a little bit different view. Over.
Yeah. I think for our point of view, the TBI is not something, it's a bad day to fly if you have a TBI. It's pretty rough for an astronaut. However, the combination of EEG, which we do plan to take with us, but it'll be like a 5 lead or something like that, and the combination of other physiological measures that would evaluate the recovery time or the downtime, the inability to perform tasks on the mission, would actually be something that's very interesting to us. I can't say the TBI part is particularly interesting, but the concept behind what you're trying to do might be so.
Excellent, thank you. Any other questions on AOI 2? Becky or Lauren, am I missing the one here?
Not seeing anything in chat or any more hands raised, so I think you're good.
Yeah, I see one here, maybe, although it's probably more general nature, from Mike Rayo again, about, are there already transition partners that have been identified as the tech moves to TRL5, or is that something that the submitters should be providing? Having relevant environments has always been difficult for our partnerships with AFRL. So the transition from obviously the OFRN program as a state-funded program to a federally funded program, or private funding, or some other type of opportunity, obviously is something that kind of is worked during the period of performance. So no, you don't have to identify it up front, but when you do your business case analysis, and as far as that's part of the proposal, it's always good to be able to include sort of where you see potentially the market is at, and where it's going, and potential partners that you might be able to work with. We have specific partners that work with the Ohio Federal Research Network that actually do that sort of transition work, especially for small businesses, that are part of the Small Business Association program, say going from like a phase 2 to a phase 3 type of a funding opportunity, or a program of record within the military. So the projects that get funded for us, we work with them very closely during their period of performance to try to ensure that there is some type of a runway that's available to them after the state funding ends. Any other questions for AOI 2? Looks like we're probably pretty close to the end of the 10-minute period here. Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate our federal partners for joining in on that one. Let's go to AOI 3 then, please. Airspace power management, materials and distribution, and the specific subtopics of aerospace electrification, relevant HVHP, fault smart switchgear, and safe partial discharge corona aware high voltage cable for aerospace. So any questions for AOI 3? And we have Chad Miller here today to answer any questions that you might have on this particular area of interest.
Mark, there is a question for topic 3 in the Q&A from an anonymous attendee. What kind of fuel / power the topic 3 is interested?
Is Chad on?
No, I'm not seeing Chad.
Okay. Well, we can, something might have happened. Maybe he couldn't join us here for this morning. Let me just make sure that. Yep, I don't, if Chad is not on, we don't have any other SMEs right now that are part of this particular AOI. So we'll have to take any questions for AOI 3 and ask our AFRL and other partners to provide written answers back to you for those particular questions. So in the Q&A, just please make sure that you identify that your question is for a specific AOI and which one, in this case, AOI 3. If it's in general for either subtopic, that's fine. Or if it's question is specific to one particular subtopic area or another, we will provide answers back to you on that particular question. And apologize for not having somebody available to be able to answer your questions for this on this particular webinar. Hopefully the next time around, we'll have somebody that can answer your questions for you. So again, please just go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A and we'll be happy to provide answers for you. I didn't mention earlier, but if you would like to have one of our subject matter experts reach out directly to you to answer a question, feel free to put your contact information or email in the Q&A as well. And this will all the Q&A is provided to our federal partners after each webinar. All right. Becky, you can go ahead and go then to AOI 4. And do we have Jason online?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. AOI 4, commercial space low Earth orbit. It's kind of a very general overall title. So in this particular case, the two subtopics are probably more specific maybe than they were the last time around that we did this, but that's perfectly fine. And those are low leakage cryogenic valves and space-based situational awareness. So again, questions on AOI 4, feel free to raise your hand and come off of mute, and you can ask Jason questions on those specific subtopics, or we will try to see if there's anything in the Q&A for that. Go ahead, Mike.
So I just wondered if there was any other clarity about subtopic 2, or how narrow or how broad that you all were thinking about the use cases there. Just having a hard, if it's everything about, I know it's low Earth orbit. Is it, are there certain certain sensors or satellites that you're thinking about to be the data points for this, or is it more broad? Is it more about this? That's, I guess, I don't want to go too far in that question, but if there are any guidance about, again, use cases that you all are more interested in or less interested in, that would be helpful as we're trying to kind of set up our submission. Over.
Jason, you're muted if you were talking there.
I was not talking. Was there a question? I didn't hear a question.
Oh, yeah, Mike had a question there. So he's looking for, I think, if I'll try to do my best to repeat it, about specific use case scenarios for subtopic number 2.
I don't mind jumping in as well. I'm tracking at least by proxy a little bit this topic for 7-11. Short answer is I'm not tracking any specific use cases that are being narrowly selected for as it was originally formulated.
Thanks. Appreciate it, Dan. And again, if you're, again, we'll try to do our best to keep track of all the questions. So if you're looking for something very specific, feel free to put it in the Q&A, because at least that way it'll ensure that it gets sent to, or that we keep track of it and it gets sent to our federal partners to be able to provide specific answers for it. I think we have another typo here, Becky. The first one, Dean Zodi, I think just pointed out to us, I believe, right?
Yes, I saw that, and it's correct. He is correct. It should be valves.
Valves. Okay. Yep. I'm not sure what I said when I read it earlier, but if I didn't say valves, then yes, it should be cryogenic valves. Correct is typically the bane of everybody's existence when you're typing stuff. Mike, did you have another question, or is your hand just still raised? Okay.
No, I lowered it. Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions
So
for? So go ahead.
So I'm reading question from Anonymous that says, would there be particular modalities of sensors of interest or should be open to new options? My only thought on that one is when discussing space-based situation awareness in this context, we are typically talking about awareness of satellites in orbit rather than using those platforms for gaining awareness of things back on the ground. So as written, it might be interpreted that they're asking about space-based sensors and their ability to provide domain awareness on Earth or of terrestrial activity. But as written, I believe that this topic's interested in maintaining awareness of things in orbit of satellites and others. So just a bit of clarity on that question. So I think the answer is, would you open to new options? No, because that's not what the problem is, if I'm reading the question correctly. Over.
Thank you. Any other questions on this particular subtop or AOI 4 or the subtopics?
So Mark, I see a question submitted from an anonymous attendee. It says, do we have defined metrics and material requirements for the valves? Could you give examples for subtopic 2? I'll have to check through my notes, but I believe we did submit, requirements in terms of leakage rates and things like that. But I can take an action to double check to make sure. I mean, the main, thing that we're interested in, right? There's material compatibility issues with certain, like for example, with certain cryogens, whether it's oxygen or hydrogen. Most of those are pretty well known, but if anybody has specific questions, they can, reach out to me, like on seat materials or metallic, materials, they can reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to help.
Excellent. Thanks. Appreciate it. We do have a hand raised, so you can feel free to come off of mute.
Hello.
Yes.
Hi, I'm Mahaganesh. I'm from Sangaban. I have a question for subtopic 1. So does it involve, is the expectation that we make valves? The outcome is that, we make newer valves of new materials and designs, or will it also include demonstrations of capabilities to predict and model the behavior of components, in multi-phase flows or cryogenic environments? Over.
Sorry, could you repeat the last part? The audio on my end kind of.
Yeah, my question was, is the outcome for subtopic 1 a newer valve produced, or would the subtopics also include at studies that predict and model the behavior of components, like in the cryogenic valves in hypersonic conditions? My question is, is the funding restricted to an actual product or a challenge part, or could the topics also be related to just modeling and prediction for the behavior of the valve in various conditions?
I see what you're saying. Yeah. I don't know if I'm the one that can answer that question. I don't know if like Becky or the others can answer. I mean, from NASA's perspective, we're definitely interested probably more in, in the hardware aspects.
Yeah.
But with certain funding, depending on the funding limitations, right, there's only so much you can do with, so many dollars. So I think that's really more up to people who are above me on this one. Sorry.
All right. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, again, I'm not speaking for NASA or AFRL or any of our other federal partners on this one here per se. But I would say that if you're interested in putting in that proposal, I would ensure that you sort of include as part of the description of, what you're wanting to do, if it's actual production of a part versus analysis, potentially of valves that maybe already exist or something along those lines, so that our technical review council, when they read the proposal and go through it for scoring purposes, that they have a really good understanding of what it is that you're proposing to have completed by the time that you get to the end of the period of performance for that. Any other questions? I think we're probably, Lauren, am I getting close to maybe 10 minutes on this one?
Yep, 10, you've got till 10:50.
Okay, so I got about one more minute. So any other questions? Are there any questions in the Q&A that I'm missing here? We have Anonymous that's asking about primary supporter of the project for space-based situational and awareness. And I believe that is our NASA partners. Although,
I mean, I know that, he's not on the call here, but the 711 does have an individual supporting subtopic 2 as well. But we're, very interested in subtopic 2. And then as far as the other question, it does include network optimization, resource allocation, RF. I would have to follow up on that one. I'm not able to answer that question.
Great, thank you. Yeah, I was actually, as I was reading the question there where he has Air Force / Space Force, I was going to say that I'm sure that Space Force is probably interested as well in this particular subtopic. So
we at NASA GRC are definitely interested in this subtopic. I can confirm.
Yep. All right. Okay, let's go ahead and next slide, Becky. I want to keep my fingers crossed that we don't have any more typos. This is quantum technologies. Subtopics, the first one being sensing, timing, and absolute calibration systems with reduced bias error or increased sensitivity. And the second one being system component or integration technologies to enable miniaturization, increased funding, or operation in mission relevant or extreme environments. I believe we do have a couple of our federal partners that are here to be able to answer questions. So let's go ahead and open it up. And I see Kevin Singh has raised his hand. Go right ahead, Kevin. I don't hear anything if you're off of mute. And I don't know, Becky, if you or Lauren can help out there or not.
Hello, you hear me?
Hello. Yep.
Oh, hey. Yeah, Kevin Singh from the Ohio State University. Yeah, I have a question about subtopic 2, which is what type of quantum technologies fall into the scope of this? Are you thinking like quantum sensors, quantum computers, or modular quantum network nodes? Over.
Yep. Thank you. So either Michael Slocum or Daniel Hart. Do we have one of those two on here?
Yeah, this is Mike. I'm sorry, I was zoning out there for a minute. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, I'm just wondering what kind of technologies are kind of the focus for subtopic 2 here. So are we thinking like devices dedicated for quantum sensing or for quantum networking or for quantum computing?
Yeah, so for subtopic 1, the topic was written specifically to sensing and timing. For topic 2, there was no modality specified. So as long as there's a relevant quantum technology that can be described and how that subsystem fits into that technology, then I think it would fit.
Okay, excellent. Let's see. I see there is a question on this AOI about in the Q&A. Mike says the subtopic is focused on component and subsystem development for quantum technologies. Can you say more about how to interpret the TRL in this case? Is it the idea that the component or subsystem should be ready to move to a higher TRL by the end of the 18-month period, even though the complete quantum technology may not be in any provides an example there on that. I don't know if you can see the Q&A.
Yeah, I can see it. I'm reading it. No, it's a good question. So I think the bounds are that this has to be applied, right, Mark?
Yes.
Yeah. So I think yes, as long as the subsystem is being matured in TRL and it's developing capabilities that are relevant to quantum systems, the overall capability in this, in your example of quantum networks, obviously quantum networks are a ways off. Quantum computing, in terms of relevant scale is a ways off. But I think it's still relevant to work on those enabling technologies because that's how we're ultimately going to get those capabilities.
Excellent. Thank you. There was a question here from Sue about can we find this AOI information and listing on the website or other places? Yes, that it is on our OFRN website. And there is a link as part of the brief, but I tell you what, Lauren, if you could put that link in the chat for everybody, that would be great. Or Becky. Any other questions for this particular AOI? Just looking through the Q&A here to see if I see anything that we have missed. Feel free to raise your hand if you have a question. Looks like there might be one. I don't think we answered this one. About is there an interest in using quantum technologies for thermal fluid systems or leveraging quantum and advancing the thermal fluid science applicable to aerospace solutions?
So I presume this is tied to subtopic 1. If you can, I think that's based on the proposal. If you can make a or justify why it's a quantum technology and provide appropriate justification for that, then it could fit.
Excellent, thank you. And Kevin asks, who's the primary supporter for the subtopic? Well, we actually have multiple federal partners that are supporters for it. Mike is with AFRL and Dan Hart is with NASA, but I don't know if Dan is on right now or not. Right, any other questions? Don't see any. So let's go ahead and go to AOI number 6. So autonomy, and the subtopics are autonomous systems operation and operator defined metrics for trusted autonomy. So again, kind of a broad overall topic, but hopefully we have Kevin Schmidt here who can answer questions for you on those particular subtopics. I think I saw one here. Yeah, Mike Rayo, Kevin is asking, are there any use cases or classes of use cases that are higher priorities? For example, are there different priorities for technologies that support and amplify analysis, case-based advice, and or taking action, or is there a broad interest in all 3 of those classes?
What were all the classes again? I think I know my answers already. No, there's no preference of one use case over another here. But Mark, can you repeat those?
Yep. Yeah, so he says, for example, are there different priorities for technologies that support and amplify analysis, comma, case-based advice, comma, and or taking action? Or is there broad interest in all of them?
Yeah, I guess that's one where I could say I'd get back to you on the most relevant use cases for both of these. Yeah, I couldn't even boil it down to air versus space. I think we're equally interested in both, and the best ideas that you guys can come up with here based on your read of the area. But perhaps that's something I could come back with.
Okay. Have a question here from Steve Sudderth that for subtopic 1 says they're working on an ISR concept that involves swarms of autonomous UAS to build large area live 3D models. ISR coverage is required and the swarm must adjust, but the focus is not the UAS themselves as much as the entire system. Is this topical under subtopic 1, or should it be more narrowly restricted to UAS autonomy?
I don't know if I completely understand the question. I don't think new platforms are part of this, like a new UAS platform as much as the algorithm. So I guess I'm thinking a lot more focus on software for subtopic 1, although the way I read it is hardware considerations are of interest, but that's implying things like neuromorphic computer chips rather than a new sort of aerodynamic system that you might come up with. I hope that helps. And on the swarm technology, those things are of interest, but again, it's more the interest here is on low swap algorithms and or processing hardware related to that subtopic 1. I hope that answers the question.
Great, thank you. There's another question here. It says NASA had interest in autonomous system operations in the advanced air mobility domain and waypoint planning. Is that still something of interest?
Absolutely.
Okay, that's an easy answer. Are there another one from an anonymous attendee? Are there particular application missions or data sets of interest to this subtopic? Would there be any specific federal partners interested in this subtopic? That's for subtopic 2.
For subtopic 2. Dan?
Yeah, I mean, I can attest that the Human Performance Wing is very interested in metrics for autonomy. Again, we have someone supporting, but he's not at this meeting today, so I'm kind of, covering down. So yeah, I can affirm AFRL's interest in this topic, particular missions or data sets. Certainly, I mean, the closeness to DoD mission sets always increases interest, but from my perspective, we are open to other use cases and analogs that may be good proxies for DoD type applications for trust for autonomous systems. So short answer is no, I don't believe there's a specific data set or mission that's narrowly scoped. It's sort of to you guys to say where you can demonstrate, relevance to a DoD mission from our perspective. Over.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And I know for subtopic 1, we explicitly had discussed perhaps putting out a relevant data set, like kind of sponsor endorsed by the federal partners. And we decided not to do this for various reasons. So I guess that's just reiterating what Dan said. Over.
Thank you. Mike, you have your hand raised?
Yeah, I have a question for subtopic 2, and that is, should we be interpreting the language of subtopic 2 more narrowly, that there's really just interest in calibrated trust as it's defined in the literature today, or should we be thinking of it more broadly? For example, things like an operator's ability to regard or disregard well-performing AI counterparts or poor-performing AI counterparts, which isn't exactly trust, it's performance, but it relates to trust and calibrated trust. Over.
Yeah.
Kevin, you first.
Okay, so this subtopic 2 is a little bit more futuristic in that I think the vision was to use conventional like in the psychology literature understandings of trust in that regard, but a specific component was this idea of like bidirectional trust. And so in what you just said, sir, was kind of leaving out the machine aspect of that. And so I think the vision there is how metrics of the machine trusting the human as well. And I think that's why it's living under the autonomy AOI, though very much human performance considerations are a part of this and have always been and will continue to be. And so that's sort of the traditional measures of trust, but also bringing other sort of metrics in there for bidirectional trust between the human and machine is the new part here. Over.
Yeah, I think that's a good answer. The only maybe nuance I would add is, certainly you're tracking that a lot of the folks at AFRL have history of, doing research in that space and are informed by both the literature as well as, prior activity in trust and trust related research. So, I think the folks are, familiar with, models and what's going on out in the research space, but certainly they're, I think, open to, other, contributions to that discussion. Over.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, any other questions on this area of interest? Mike, I see your hand still up, so I don't know if you have another question or, oh, there we go. Excellent. Anybody else? Have I missed anything, Becky or Lauren, in the Q&A?
I don't think so.
Okay. In that case, let's go on to the last area of interest. This is advanced materials technology, critical material supply for aerospace. So the subtopics are methods for production, joining, and modeling of oxide dispersion strengthened alloys and thermally conductive electrically, insulating materials. So feel free again to put your question in the Q&A, or you can raise your hand. If you have a question that deals with this, then we have Eric Rises with us from NASA, Glenn, to answer any questions. Let's see. Question from Boyd that says, would a weldability study that includes multiple processes be of interest, or does it fit into either of the subtopics for Eric?
Yeah, I could talk about this. Hi Boyd, how you doing? Yes, the answer is yes. Right now, a lot of what we're doing with the ODS materials, at least at NASA Glenn, revolves around the laser powder bed fusion process. So pretty high solidification rates, but we would like to explore other types of welding processes, whether it be larger laser systems, and then moving into more conventional arc or some of the hybrid laser and arc processes to understand, can we still get a good dispersion, things like that. So yes, multiple processes are something we're looking for.
Excellent, thank you. Anupam, Vivek, you can come off of mute if you'd like, or if it's the same question that you put into the Q&A. So the question that's in the Q&A was, should the research address all of the questions mentioned in subtopic 1, or is answering a subset good? For Eric.
Yeah, so when we put together this kind of solicitation, you don't have to answer all of the production, joining, and modeling aspects. I mean, would it make a pretty powerful proposal? Yeah, it would if you did answer all of them. But if you guys see a way where you can really kind of push in one of those areas and make really great progress, of course, you don't have to, I guess, answer all of those. So, do what you're good at, I'd say. And, let's keep this Ohio, right? So that's the point.
Yeah.
So I know we got a lot of great, universities, industry members out there that are already working on ODS. So find your partners, do a good job putting this together, and do what you're good at so that we can kind of keep this rolling.
Awesome, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Question from Anonymous: is conducting heat transfer analysis computationally a part of this AOI?
Yeah, I would say that would be something that's interested to incorporate in a proposal. Just a reminder to everybody that this is supposed to be applied, right? Applied research. So I know some of the research questions specifically within this subtopic 1 are a little bit more basic, but as long as you kind of get some level of applied research in there to increase the TRL level, that would be helpful for making your proposals more competitive.
Excellent, thank you. Anupam also asks, is the starting material to join always going to be a powder, or can we do plates and tubes as well?
No, anything that you can get your hands on that's ODS and that you can do research on that will give us some insight on kind of the behavior of some of this material is okay. It doesn't have to be powder. For example, if you found some ODS like feed crawl or something that you wanted to do some, different joining techniques or modeling, or if you got your hands on some conventionally, what is it, MA 956, anything that's ODS that you want to investigate, that we could learn from and grow in the state of Ohio, by all means.
Fantastic, thank you. This is kind of a general question, but I'll just go ahead and answer it for everybody that's on here now. About says we cannot have partners from out of Ohio. So you actually can have partners from out of Ohio, but you have to meet the basic requirements, which is you have to have at least one business partner that has a physical location here in the state of Ohio and 2 universities from the state of Ohio. Now you can have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, however many other university partners that you want, but you have to at least have 2 PIs from the state of Ohio from 2 different universities that are on your team, as well as a business that has a physical location here in the state of Ohio that is on your team on that. So it's all about meeting the minimum requirements. If you want to go over and above those minimum requirements, then that's great. And if you need help meeting those minimum requirements, then that's what the teaming part of what we do is all about, to make sure that you do meet the minimum requirements. Let's see, asking for contact information, which is fine. We'll make sure that if there's a specific contact that you're looking for, we can help you out with that. Someone was asking, is there an AFRL contact for this topic area, or is it primarily NASA application focused? I think there's both, right, Eric? I know you're obviously NASA, but I'm pretty sure we had some AFRL partners.
Yes, there is an AFRL partner. If you want to just get in contact with me, Eric Brizes, and then I can kind of shoot you to the best AFRL counterpart, because they, I don't know if they're in this meeting or not. But I think there are some AFRL, people in here, like Calvin is also interested in ODS, so Calvin Mickler. But yeah, if you can use me as the primary contact if you'd like, anybody on the call.
Great, thank you. Let's see. I know there's a few other things that we want to get through today. So I don't, Lauren, how are we doing?
Actually,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
question.
Yep.
There was a question there that I actually am also interested in the answer to. It says, is UDRI considered a university? So can you clarify whether, affiliated research institutes meet the university requirement, or they, count as industry, or how those are treated for the purposes of OFRN?
Becky, you want to take that one?
I count them as a university.
Yeah, we actually have
like in UDRI's case, they are still under the University of Dayton umbrella.
Yeah. It's a little bit of what's the technical definition in this particular case for UDRI, because they're still part of the university, that they do count for the university. Let's see. Says question is, in regards to an industry partner, when I say physical location in Ohio, do you mean a company headquarters, or could it be an office? No, the office is fine. So we actually have had global companies in the past that have opened an office in the state of Ohio just because they want to participate in this program. And we also have other companies. An example would be Saffron, does a lot of course, work with engines for in the aerospace and aviation area. That is a global company that has a physical location up in Northeast Ohio, that has been a partner on this one of these projects in the past. Cost share, that's a good question. It always comes up, says how important any previous winners without cost share. I couldn't tell you off the top of my head, but I would say that if you look at the makeup of the TRC and our executive review board, those are sort of half and half of senior individuals from academia as well as from industry. They're very educated and skilled on understanding cost share and how it works. So generally, if you don't put any cost share in at all, they may question that as to why there's no cost share. Obviously, time counts as cost share. So for a PI or for an industry partner, if you're using or supplying some of the time that your researchers are working on a project, then that would count as cost share. And there's of course other ways that you can count cost share. Most of that I think is outlined in the solicitation, Becky, is that correct?
Yes, there is a cost share. I think it's an attachment that shows definitions and examples.
Okay, let's go ahead then. So thanks again to all of our federal partners that were able to join here today. We can probably let you go for now, and we'll go ahead and move on to a couple of other items that are on here that are important for those that are interested in potentially partnering or putting together a team to be able to do a proposal for OFRN Round 7. So next slide, please, Becky. So we sort of count this as, or we consider this what we call the resources part of the briefing. So the last 10 or 12 minutes or so will be part of that. So I'll turn it over to Dave Nestick, who will talk a little bit about OMIC and what they do and how they can help if you need help from them.
Thanks, Mark, and thanks for this opportunity to introduce the Ohio Manufacturing Innovation Center, or OMIC as we call it. We're a relatively new nonprofit 501c3 that was set up last year with the help of ODHE and ODOD funding. We have a fully equipped, we're located in Hilliard, Ohio, which is a suburb of Columbus. And we put together a fully equipped electronic production lab. We have broad technical capabilities. We hire interns, and we put interns on projects with experienced mentors. So this relates to the student experiential engagement part of the proposals for OFRN. You know, we're also STTR partner eligible, and our capabilities technically are pretty broad. Although we focus on electronics and electronic design and production, we have hired interns for projects that span different technology areas, including things like photonics, tracking technologies, you know, just different types of projects, and we'll go out and we'll find the interns that can support that. And all of the interns that we do hire are U.S. citizens as well. Becky, next slide, please. So our potential contributions in this case, of course, is OMIC can ID and hire the appropriate talent from any institution. We've had students that are Ohio-based from Rose-Hulman, from Purdue. We've had University of Cincinnati. Ohio State, of course, is a strong one for us. Case Western, we've had students from all over. They can be guided by the academic PI in your project or by the industry lead for the project. So the industry has much more insight into what the intern work is doing. And they can be chosen to align with industry technical objectives as well. So a win for us is when industry actually hires an intern that they've met through our program. So, you know, the technical capabilities, again, are the core focus, microelectronics, prototyping and testing, but they're augmented by partnerships for mechanical and material needs. We have CNC capabilities, additive, injection molding, and other metalwork type capabilities. And then we also support companies that we partner with for follow-on funding, like SBIR and STTR. We do have a support program with experienced people in those federal research programs. And that's a natural progression for follow-on funding for a lot of the OFRN projects that have occurred in the past. So anyhow, that's the Ohio Manufacturing Innovation Center. Contact information, you can find out more. I'll try to drop it in the chat, but Becky, I saw that I'm kind of restricted to chatting just with the panelists. But I can get you the information. It's innovatingohio.org is the website, innovatingohio.org. And my email address is dave@ innovatingohio.org. We'll be sure to put it on future slides. So thank you, Mark, again, for this opportunity. And if anybody's interested, please get in contact with us.
Thanks, Dave. Appreciate it. Thanks for the information. Okay, next slide, Becky. So I've been talking all along about team matchmaking. So again, the OFRN as a program requires a minimum, it doesn't say that, but it's listed there, a minimum of 2 universities in Ohio, 1 industry partner that, as I mentioned, has a physical location in the state of Ohio, and then a federal collaborator. And we can help with all of those things for that. So as I mentioned, we have the team matchmaking, and that's kind of what is illustrated there on the bottom left part of this particular slide. So on the OFRN Round 7 website, if you scroll to the bottom, it says click here to go to the matchmaking tool, and that's the bottom little screen there that says Round 7 matchmaking. And then you just fill that out, and we will help out when it comes to getting you put together with the team or on a team. Next slide, please. Questions. So there's a sort of a general web location that you can submit questions to. And we actually, ask that you do it this way only because that way we can capture all of the questions. If you send me something, that's fine. I'll probably forward it to Becky or Lauren to make sure that we get it into the database where all the questions go. For that. And then there will also be a frequently asked questions or a view FAQ that's on the website as well. And that's where we'll be posting all of the answers to all of the questions that get asked. I would say you can put a reminder on your calendar or something to maybe once a week or every few days or something, probably go and check the view FAQ to see if there's updates to questions that have been answered, or maybe if you have a question to see if it's been answered yet that was posted there. Next slide, please. And again, if you maybe are putting together a team, but you don't have a point of contact in one of our federal partners, that's can be either done through the OFRN-question at parallaxresearch.org email, or you can go through the team matchmaking as well to do that. Next slide. Okay, and that's it. Here are our email addresses. So for myself and for Becky, please feel free to submit questions to either one of us. Or better yet, submit it to the Round 7 questions email there on the bottom. It says OFRN-questions at parallaxresearch.org. Go to the OFRN website, and under the solicitations, you can find Round 7 with all of the information that you need there as well. And we are very excited about OFRN Round 7 and our federal partners, and I know they are excited as well about getting some really outstanding proposals for some of these areas of interest. And we really look forward to the next couple of months as we go through this process. So again, thank you so much for joining today. And Becky or Lauren, did I miss anything, or do we need to add anything?
I don't think so.
Okay, Becky, anything from you?
No, I just ask that, if you have questions, make sure you do send them to the OFRN-question at parallaxresearch.org. So like Mark said, so we can better keep track of them and their responses, and then we will post them to the FAQ on the website. If you need help finding a federal collaborator, I would suggest just sending your request to the OFRN-question at Parallax email so we can better track it, and then just give us an idea of what your project is. And that'll help us decide who it needs to be routed to.
Yeah, at the very
To
least,
find a proper collaborator.
Yeah, at the very least, which AOI and what subtopic it is that
Yeah.
that you need help with. Yep. All right, fantastic. Okay, well, as I said, this will be posted on the website in a couple of days, and check back frequently for answers to the questions. So, hope everybody has a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for your interest in the Ohio Federal Research Network, and we look forward to working with you all in the future. Have a great day.